Thanksgivings ago, my dad reveals to me a family secret, a bombshell. Why is it always at Thanksgiving? Right? It's like family gets together, booze starts flowing, people start sharing. In order for you to fully appreciate this bombshell, you need to know something about my mother and my father. My mother is an immigrant to this country. She's from South Africa. She's glamorous. She has an accent. She's a graceful person. She's hardworking. She's funny. She's a woman of profound faith. And she's somebody I've always admired. I grew up hearing stories of her life in Johannesburg and Durban. And my dad is also exotic. He's from Fresno. But I gotta say, he's no slouch. My dad was a minor league baseball player. He's a very successful accountant. He's hardworking. He's funny. He's intelligent. He even looks good holding a glass of scotch. I mean, he had to be charming enough to get a South African former model to marry him and move to this country. The other thing about my dad is he doesn't really talk very much. He's not a big sharer. But on this night at Thanksgiving, it's a different script, apparently. He's had a few glasses of Malbec, and he says to me, Colin, when you were 2 years old, your mother kidnapped you and took you to South Africa, and I didn't see you for 6 months. Yeah, that's about how I reacted. I gotta be honest, first off, my dad didn't say kidnap, he said, she took you without my knowledge or permission. It washes out about the same. I just want to be clear on these facts. Yeah, but I've heard this story before from my mom, and I got to say, it was a little bit lighter on the kidnapping part. It was more like a fun vacation, And I know that for my mom, it was a strange experience, and she was miserable in this new country, in this marriage, and she ends up taking me and going back to a familiar place to be with people she loves, just to recalibrate. And I think she meant to go for a couple of weeks, and then it became a couple of months. Kidnapping is a slippery slope. But my dad on this night is telling me his side of this story, and I've never heard it before. He says, Colin, it was awful. I didn't know where you were. I came home one day and you were gone, and Jackie was gone. I didn't know where you were for 2 days, and when I found out, you were 6,000 miles away. And I didn't know if I would ever see you. And it was so bad that, honestly, we had the idea that we would hire somebody to go and to grab you and to take you back. So they were going to hire a kidnapper to kidnap me from my current kidnapper. And both of the people in that sentence are my parents. They've never told me this story before. And I think, why not? This is an incredible story. I mean, this is dramatic. This is like Taken. My dad is Liam Neeson. My mom is an Albanian crime ring. Which is funny. And not entirely fair. My mom felt horrible about this hasty decision. And while she was there, her cousin invited her to church, and she became a born-again Christian, and it was an epiphany. It changed her whole life, and she said, I have to do the right thing, even if I lose this little boy. And she flew back, and the judge split custody between them. As long as my mother never lived outside of the U.S., she could have custody of me. And so at 6 years old, I'm flying back and forth, first to South Africa, and then to New York, and to California, 6 times a year. This doesn't even seem odd to me. I'm an unaccompanied minor. And the thing about my parents, it's so classy, they never spoke ill of each other. They also never spoke of each other. And in that silence, I came to a lot of conclusions that I actually never shared with anybody. I realized that I had no memory of my mother and father in the same physical space at any point. Because I was too young when they first split up. And I realized there was no photo of the three of us together. And I felt like a piece of a family that no longer existed. I felt like a reminder of something that everyone would rather forget. And I had this sentence, and I never told anybody this. I believed that if you really knew me, you would reject me. And I made decisions based on that. I avoided relationships because of that. I designed the outline of my life with that sentence as my foundation. And I never told anybody. On the surface, I was a happy-go-lucky kid because I didn't want them to feel bad about these strange thoughts that I was having. All I wanted was to be accepted, and all I ever felt like was an outsider. It probably didn't help that I was raised fundamentalist Christian. It's okay. It's fine. I'm better now. I was thinking about it, and I was like, what's the most fun way I could tell you about being raised Christian? And I was like, oh, I got it. It was the time that in my church I joined the clown troupe, which was named Clowns for Christ. That's still difficult to say out loud. It's been a little bit of time. I always wanted to be a performer, and it just so happened that my whole world was church. You know, we went on Sunday, we went, Sunday school, church, Sunday night service, Wednesday night Bible study, Thursday night Christian Boy Scouts. That's a real thing. Friday nights, obviously, I had rehearsals with my clown troupe for the big gig at the nursing home, I'm assuming. I can't remember specifically. I went to Christian high school. I went to Christian college. I mean, I could not get enough. It was my whole world. And what I loved about it was that I felt accepted. I was with these people who loved to laugh, and we would have dinner with different families after church on Sunday, and there was just always a lot of joy. But I also knew that if I ever stopped behaving or believing like I was supposed to, that acceptance might be taken away. And so I leaned in as hard as I possibly could. I read the book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And I kissed dating goodbye. I never dated, but I kissed it goodbye. All I wanted was to be pure, to be righteous, to be the man my mom wanted me to be. And this was my script, this was my whole life, because my parents had it all together. See, I'd never heard this dramatic story of what happened when I was 2 years old. And I remember when I was at Thanksgiving, when this is revealed to me for the first time, I remember thinking that my parents are unreliable narrators. They've been telling me the version of the story that they most want me to hear, and suddenly some of their behavior makes sense. My mother's just love of church and faith, right? Because faith is all about second chances and redemption. And my dad is the one who introduced me to movies. He loves movies because in movies, every detail works together and pays off in an amazing ending. And growing up, all I wanted to do was please these two people, which is a big reason why I was so devoted to church. Now, I got to say, I lied earlier. I said this is the most fun way I can tell you I was raised Christian. It's not. There's a much more fun way, which is that I am the star of a series of movies produced by a megachurch for Vacation Bible School. Yeah. Some of you are recognizing me. Yeah. Let me back up a little, explain how that came to be. I went to Christian high school, I went to Christian college, and I moved to Vermont after that. And I came to Vermont as I was really raised to be, which is a pretty narrow-minded, slightly homophobic, judgmental, conservative, born-again Christian. And I feel like Vermont said, let me love you. Just a little bit. And within only a few years, yoga had become my church. I voted for Bernie, and many of my best friends were lesbians. Yeah, it's a success story. I agree with you. But this would have been before that transition took place, right? So I've come to Vermont, and I'm looking for purpose, and I'm sort of lost. And my mom says to me, they're looking for somebody to star in this series of movies based on Indiana Jones. And I said, this is my purpose. This is what I'm put here to do. Let's look at the facts. I love movies. I've always wanted to be in a movie. I love Indiana Jones. And somehow I ignored everything else about that scenario. So I showed up on the first day, and I never had acting training, so I was like, I need to do something extra to really nail the lead role of Dakota Joe. And my big idea was I'm going to do an accent. I've been watching a lot of Man vs. Wild, and I thought, I probably got this. And unfortunately, it sounded like this. I was like, hello, boys and girls, I'm Dakota Joe. That's not great. It's like if you were to point on a globe to how many countries that comes from, you would need both hands. That's like Wales by way of Australia, by way of Buffalo, New York. You know, it's a mess. It won't surprise you. They loved the accent. It was a hit. I got a fedora hat. I had a button-down, disheveled button-down. I had a satchel with nothing in it. I submitted a prompt request for a whip. I was denied. And I really wanted to nail this. I really wanted this to be fun. I gotta say, actually, it was a lot of fun filming these videos. I paddled in a canoe. I climbed around in a cave. I ran through the wilderness of Indian Brook. And, you know, I had these thoughts, like, what are we making? This is not going to be good. And the main reason was because of the dialogue that I had to say. I had a puppet sidekick, voiced by a 9-year-old, who was really just there to like repeat what I said in a more heavy-handed way, just to really underline the message. He was not necessary. Okay, this was an actual line of dialogue I had to say. I was like, oh, all this time, I thought I was looking for a jewel, but I was really looking for Jesus. It's no Shawshank Redemption. I agree with you. Like, even the 6-year-olds who saw it later were like, we get it. It's on the nose. We get it. And I thought we were creating a train wreck. At one point, I'm like in Quake Lake, you know, in the wilderness, and behind me, these girls swim by with floaties on. You know? I'm like, this is a disaster. It turns out that this youth pastor might as well have been a professional filmmaker, because he took whatever we did and cut it into these very tightly edited, dramatic music, cliffhanger ending clips, and it was the hit of Vacation Bible School. These kids, that's all they could talk about. Each day was a new episode. The youth pastor calls me in the middle of the week. I said, how's it going? He said, oh my gosh, Colin, these kids love it. And I had this idea. Would you come on Friday in costume and just kind of pop out and surprise the kids? I think they'd really love that. And I was like, okay, you know, like I'm just thrilled this is going well, you know, and I'm thinking about it, and he fails to tell me that these kids really believe that I'm actually Dakota Joe, or at the very least a professional actor from Hollywood, and not what I really am, which is a 20-something, directionless, kind of depressed young man currently living in Essex Junction in his mother's basement. I was like, yeah, I gotta go to the house. I'd be happy to go. And so I show up on Friday, and I'm wearing the costume. I'm hiding in a broom closet, and I can hear the kids, but I don't know how many there are. It seems like there's a lot. And they start the program, and sing a couple songs, and then the youth pastor goes, boys and girls, I have a special surprise. Please welcome our guest, Dakota Joe. And I come running out onto the stage, and they roll a paper-mache boulder, which I jump over. You know? This feels like a good moment to pause, because this is the exact moment that I took in the sight of, I'm going to say, 500 children who lose their minds. They are like, ah! I'm like, hello, boys and girls. They're like, ah! I mean, I felt like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It was a rush. You know, at one point I was like, is SpongeBob standing behind me? Like, they're cheering for me. And I needed to win. It felt pretty good. And then the program ended. And I had to stay in the room and stay in character. So to keep up the illusion, I've done no research, I have no backstory, I can barely manage his accent on a good day. This little girl walks up to me, and she goes, Dakota Joe? She's nervous. The lies that I am telling to be standing here. She says, can I have your autograph? I'm like, yeah. I haven't written cursive since 8th grade. I could come up with a D and a J. I turn, and someone hands me a Sharpie, and I turn back, and then she's handing me her Bible. What's the rule in this situation? Does anybody know? There's no training for a moment like this. I'm thinking to myself, this is wrong. But also, don't crush the girl's dreams. That's wrong too. So I'm like, Dakota Joe! In a fake name, in the word of the Lord. I think to myself, please, that won't happen again. And that's when a little boy sees it and goes, he's signing Bibles. And a tsunami of 3-foot-tall people poured toward me. They backed me up against the wall. I am like Tom Cruise at a movie premiere. I'm signing everything. I signed a t-shirt. I signed a program. I think I signed a face. And I'm going to say about 40 more Bibles. And you can judge me all you want. But that is the day I was the most famous I will ever be in my life. In the lamest way possible. I can recall sitting on my bed later that night, I could still feel the reverberation of the cheers of all these children. And I was thinking to myself, what just happened? And also, never tell anyone. This is the weirdest thing that's ever happened. And you've been going to church since you were a zygote, and you think this is weird. How will you explain this to anyone? And the other thing I remember sitting there is thinking, these kids, they saw this tightly edited final product. The story of Dakota Joe, right? But I saw all the rest of the experience of filming. A lot of which included me trying to convince myself to say lines that made my whole body cringe. Not to mention they were things that I wasn't even sure I agreed with or believed in. Saying them into a camera, not knowing what this would be used for. And I had a thought, and I've been having that thought since I was 10 years old, but I tried to ignore it every time it came up. And the thought was this: Colin, if you're not in after an experience like this, you might not be in. Which is a terrifying thought. Because this is my whole world. And if you've ever left church or thought about leaving church, then you know that if you do, you lose your salvation, you lose your community, you lose your whole identity, all at the same time. I didn't know where to put that feeling. I put it where I put a lot of the thoughts I had. I put it in this dark, quiet place I never shared with anybody. I thought, if anyone really knew this story, they would reject me. This is insane. And at the time, ironically, I was trying to write a great novel. I was trying to write a beautiful piece of art. And I made that. It's funny now, but at the time it was really painful. And I was a writer, and writing for me was basically a socially acceptable mask for depression. A word I didn't even understand at that point. I didn't even know what it meant to be depressed, but I would sit and I would play mixes of sad music, and I would write stories about sad young men trying to deal with their pain and heal. I think I was writing about me. And I thought it made me deep. But what I didn't tell people was that I would write and then I would hate everything I wrote. And I think people could tell, I was that kind of writer, you might know, who is like, always working on something, and you say, "Can I read it?" And I would go, "No." And you would say, "Okay, well, how long till it's done?" And I would say, "Never." Change the subject. I didn't have my permission to be a writer. Nothing I wrote was good enough. And the irony is I wrote a lot. I wrote whole books in my 20s that no one's ever read. Things I was really proud of and worked really hard on, but I was such a perfectionist and I was so afraid of rejection, and I put all of that in this place, in this depression. Now I did get a good opportunity. I became a journalist, and I'm writing stories and getting paid for the first time. I'm not getting paid well, but I am getting paid, and I'm telling people stories, and I'm building a network, and it's exciting. You know, that sadness has lifted, and I'm feeling a sense of purpose. It's the first job I've ever really loved. And I feel like I'm starting to figure out who I am. And then the strangest thing, after about a year of this, the sadness, it comes back. And now it's interfering with my work. I can't finish my articles. I stay in my apartment alone for days. And on Friday, I try to come up with something to submit to my editor, and I'm missing deadlines. And I can't call contacts because I try to dial the phone, and I just picture every line of the conversation. And it always ends with them going, "This guy is so awkward." And when I have to be at public events and take notes and do my job, I can feel my skin crawling. And I feel like everyone can see there's something so weird about this guy, and I can't hide it. And I'm alone a lot. When I'm in public, I'm performing, I'm pretending to smile and be this person, and it feels like the wheels are coming off of my life. And I don't tell people, but I'm harming myself. Nothing serious. I don't want to die, but I don't want to live. And of all people, the editor at this little paper, he calls me in one day to figure out what's going on with me. I used to be such a good reporter. He takes one look at me, I can't make eye contact, and he gives me a business card for a therapist. I've never been to therapy in my life. I was raised to be suspicious of therapy. And that's like the more extreme of the two voices. The saner of the two voices would have been my dad's approach. My dad's Irish Catholic. And you know that game. Hold your emotions in until you die, and then you win. Which is not that helpful. And I'm trying, and for some reason I go, I'm going to do this. And I go, and I see this therapist. And right away, I'm trying to manage how crazy I must seem, which is only making me seem that much more unhinged. Like, I'm overthinking everything he's saying. I'm like, ha, 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 you know, like, I'm fine, you know, like panic, you know, crazy eyes, all of it. At the end of our first visit, he says, let's schedule another one. There was plenty left to be done. And I threw out a date, and he goes, we can't do it that week. I'm taking my family on vacation. And I go, oh, where are you going? And he pauses, just for a second. And I panicked. I thought, oh no, I've made him uncomfortable. You're not allowed to ask that. And so I say, don't worry, I'm not going to go all Cape Fear on you. Why say that? I'm trying to set this man's mind at ease, and I compare myself to a movie where a man hunts down a family and ruins their lives forever. Like, if I could take it again, I would at least recommend saying, I'm not going to go all What About Bob on you, which is a remake, and it's a little bit lighter. But Sam, with anything I say, just smiles. I can't throw him. And I'm sharing things with him that I've never told anybody, you know? And through our work together, we cured a lot of my phobias and neuroses. I will say in the process, we created a new phobia, which is the fear of seeing your therapist in public, right? He knows too much. I can't have him walking around in life. He needs to stay in the little office. That's the deal. If you want my copay, just stay in the little office. To make matters worse, he lives in my neighborhood. I see him all the time. he's walking his daughter to school, and I come down and I'm like, ah. And I imagine, that we get close enough to be in earshot, and his daughter looks up at me and goes, "Oh, that's Colin, isn't it?" You son of a bitch. That didn't happen. Sam was an amazing person to tell my stories to. He said, "Why do you need therapy?" I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you, if you really knew me, I believe that you would reject me. And that's really impacting the way I see it. I feel like I'm worthless. I mean, I say horrible things to myself. And there's another problem, which is that I'm a virgin. And I need help, man. Like, I have missed the timeline. Like, you heard the Dakota Joe story. This doesn't surprise you. But I'm carrying this secret, and anytime I try to date, I hijack it almost immediately. I can never let myself go. I can never let myself relax and have fun and be with somebody I like. I just immediately pull back and shut down, and I'm afraid, and I don't know why. And I'm tired. I'm tired of this secret. Now, I'm going to tell you the story of my first time. And I'm not going to tell you how old I was quite yet. But I will give you a hint. I was a virgin when the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin came out. I knew it was a comedy. I remember sitting in the theater and everybody was laughing and having a great time, and I was like, yeah, that checks out. It was like a documentary about my life. Like I said, I was raised extremely religious. I don't know why I bring that up. It's not like that has everything to do with how I ended up in this situation. And I'm telling Sam about this, and I'm so ashamed. And he says, Colin, let me just check in about a couple things. Number one, I feel like from what you've said that maybe you don't believe in marriage. You talked about the pain of your parents' divorce and all that. And I said, you're right, I don't. He said, but don't you also believe that you can't have sex until you are married? I said, I never put that together before. He said, it's kind of a rock and a hard place, isn't it? And I said, it has gotten hard. And we both laughed. And we needed it, because it was getting pretty serious in there. And Sam kind of thinks for a second. He says, Colin, I'm going to say something to you, and I don't know if you're going to agree. This is my belief. I believe that sex is a gift from God for you to share with somebody that you really care about. And maybe that's enough rules to put around something so special. And I know that it is true. I've never heard an idea like this before, and I believe it 100%, just as I know there is nowhere to put this idea in my entire paradigm. And I feel that paradigm disintegrate that much faster. Not long after that, I see a girl in a coffee shop. Her name is Robin. She's a mysterious, pretty girl. I feel compelled. I'm going to talk to her. I'm not going to wait, and figure out when she's here and try and contrive a reason. Like, let's move this thing along, man. You're 28 years old. Go talk to her. So I get up and I walk toward her, and I'm like, yeah, no. And I keep going to get a drink of water, because that's all I really wanted. And I said, Colin, you're not allowed to sit down until you talk to her. And so I drink 9 cups of water. And I walk up to her. And I introduce myself. And she has a nice smile. I try to make her laugh, and she does. We start talking. I said, what's your name? And she says, Robin. And I said, our names are so similar. I had a lot of game. You understand? She looked past that. I don't know how. She did. I got her number. We went on a date. And I think because of the honesty that I was experiencing with Sam, I felt like I could be brave. And I said something to her I did not expect to share. I said, Robin, this is going great, and I'm afraid I'm about to change all that, but I just got to tell you, I'm a virgin. And I actually looked down. I was so ashamed, and I caught myself. I looked back up, She had this funny look on her face, and she said, I can help you with that. And she did, you guys. You know, the next morning I laid there waiting for the guilt to arrive that I'd been promised. I had been taught that when you sleep with somebody that you're not married to, it's as if you tear a piece of your heart away and it never heals. Which is not scientifically sound. But we weren't really big into science, so it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of pushback. But suddenly that seemed so absurd. Because I didn't feel guilt, I didn't feel regret, I felt proud. Because for the first time in a long time, I made a decision on my terms and I trusted myself to do it. And also, I wished that I could go back and tell 14-year-old Colin praying for the godly soulmate, the woman that he will someday share himself with for the first time, and tell him that what you're actually praying for is a 31-year-old divorced atheist bisexual. She is everything you're going to need in that moment. Now, it won't surprise you with a laundry list of differences like that Robin and I did not last long. Which is when it started to occur to me that this whole journey wasn't actually about Robin. It was about Sam. I wanted to get laid. That was like my surface goal, right? But my deeper hope was to learn how to be authentic and open with somebody and just have them say, okay. And just be there in that room. And that was Sam. And it filled me with such a sense of possibilities that I could take this idea, I could act on it, and I could change the course of my life. And I felt brave in a way I hadn't in a long time. And I looked at those books that I'd been writing that I was so afraid to share, and I said, let's do something brave. This is a twist. It feels like it was written by someone else. What do you do with a young man who is so afraid of rejection, whose every word is too precious, who's too fragile with everything he shares? You get him hooked on stand-up comedy. Because that'll toughen him up real quick. I went to a comedy class, and I felt like I was walking to my death. Right? It's public speaking, but it's more than that. It's public speaking on steroids. You tell a joke, and then you just hope it works, and if it doesn't, you failed in front of people. It's actually very vulnerable, and that's not even the strangest part. Because when you get past that, and you start telling jokes, people can yell things at you in the middle of your performance. This doesn't happen in like any other art form. You'll never go to a violin concerto and someone will stand up in seat 62F and be like, it's cool, I brought my own cello. You're never going to see that. But in comedy, somebody can be like, have a few drinks, and they're like, yep, I'm going to do the show now from my seat. And a lot of comedians see hecklers as like combat, right? You got to dominate them, you got to kick them out, you got to shut them down right away. I never saw it that way because the hecklers that I had said some of the funniest things that I'd ever heard. I'm going to share a few with you. One time a woman yelled at me, "It must be hard not to get punched in the face." To which I had no reply. Because it's not hard at all. I am great at not getting punched in the face. I've designed my whole life around it. Another time I'm at a comedy show at a college, and everyone is hammered. And there's this girl in like pink Lululemon. She's completely hammered, and she yells out, "I want to have your babies." I guess a lot of guys would be psyched in a situation like that. What I said was, "No, thank you." It's a very neighborly offer with long-term consequences. But the worst heckler I ever got was actually as a result of my job. I got this job teaching financial literacy to high school students. And I got a chance to speak at a teachers conference about what I've been doing and try to share some ideas. And my worst heckler came from a teachers conference on a Tuesday afternoon. I did not see that coming. I got 62 fairly positive evaluations, but the 63rd I'll never forget. She wrote, "This suffered in comparison to the keynote speaker, who has been doing this for 27 years. Like, how do I apply that?" And then she said, "I found this to be very talky." I'm a speaker. What were you expecting? I could make you a diorama. Yes, an awkward silence no one wants. And then she wrote, "Much of this is stuff I already," and then a period. So I guess we'll never know. I remember reading that 63rd evaluation, and I felt like I was being punched in the stomach, because I was really proud. I wanted to be a speaker. That was my real love. And I felt like this woman was just seeing through me. She was rejecting me. And I actually went home and I got in bed. And then my alarm went off at 7 p.m. because there was an open mic that night. And I went to the open mic and I just read that evaluation verbatim. And it killed. And I thought, oh yeah, you're that person in this story. Every good story needs a villain. Thank you. And it actually was a really good lesson, because what I realized in that moment is that when you have a heckler, you always get to respond. You think that the heckler speaks for the room. They don't. Everyone hates the heckler. And they want to see what you'll say next. You can always respond to the heckler. And this was a good lesson, because at that point in my comedy career, the depression, which I lifted again, was back. And I was experiencing this surreal time where I would write about how sad I felt, and people would laugh, and I would feel numb. I would tell jokes like, it's hard to do small talk when you're depressed. People are like, "How are you?" You're like, "I'm fine, just slipping into the void. How are you?" And I'd come off stage and people would say, "Dark." I like it, it's dark. And I'd be like, "Can you help me? I don't want to talk about joke structure right now." You know, I would do a comedy show, I would kill. And then I would walk 3 blocks out of the venue, and I would be sad again. And I thought, what do I do? What do I do now? I had a heckler in my head, and the thing about the heckler in my head, he's savage. He knows me. He knows my weak spots. He knows just what to say. He would say things to me like, "Much of your early writing is too derivative." Like, I worry about that, man. He would say, "If you forget to suck in, or your armpits get too sweaty, no one's going to hire you to be a speaker." Shit, like I'm wearing prescription deodorant all the time. Like, this is a major insecurity. Thank you for yelling it in my face. I forgot it for 1 second. One time he said to me, "The thing about you is that you're handsome and you're funny and you're nice. And that's why people can't tell how weird you are." That one's like a trick. It starts off like a compliment, and ninjutsu's into something that is really mean. But honestly, if anyone ever said that, wouldn't you just like them so much? What an honest thing to say. And so all I had learned to do at that point was to make jokes out of the sad things in my life. And it did make me feel a little better. I remember looking at my depressed writing 20s, and I thought about the fact that, I've been writing the whole time in a genre called unsellable. And that did make me feel better. Or I would bring up the fact that I get seasonal affective disorder. Anybody here get seasonal affective disorder? Yeah. Anybody get a little depression going on? Yeah. Give it up if you get depressed. Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard thing to get behind, isn't it? start clapping, and you're like, I'm not actually not happy about it. I do get seasonal affective disorder, and then when it's nice again, I realize, oh yeah, I have all season. Nothing's going to change. And in addition to SAD, seasonal affective, I get another condition. It's called Doritos affective disorder. And it's very technical, but basically you eat a whole bag of Doritos and you just hate yourself. You know, you just fingers covered in cheesy dust. You know, no one will ever love me. You know. If you ever put together the Doritos affective disorder, the initials are DAD, a therapist will just light up at that. Let's unpack that. Right? That's 12 sessions right there. But comedy was bringing some good things into my life. You know, it actually was bringing my dad back into my life because I think he maybe always wanted to be a performer. And he was fascinated by stories of me doing comedy, and he loved to talk to me about it. And I also met a girl at a comedy show. I walk in and I see this girl, and I think, I have to talk to her. And so I talk to her in the middle of my act, because I don't want to lose the courage. I realize that she's at a yoga studio in Burlington. I've met her before, and we have this funny banter, and the crowd laughs, and she comes up to me afterwards, and I meet her, and we start talking, and then I meet her boyfriend. That set us back a little while. We started as friends. We even worked together on a few projects, and then when the time was right, we started dating. And I knew way before I was ready that this was the person for me. And it brought back all of my fears. Because the thing about dating is that there's like this window, right? It's kind of like performing. You shower, you put on your best outfit, you show up, you try to be charming for a while, and then you go home, and then you can like fart, you know, just be yourself, you know, your real self, and rest until you have to perform again. But the more you get that person to like you, the fewer and fewer moments like that happen until you're seeing each other all the time. And more importantly, she's seeing all the moments that I've been trying to hide from the world as long as I can remember. She's seeing me at my unfiltered, unscripted, neurotic, scared self. I'm afraid I'm going to lose her. It's not all bad. A lot of it's funny. I mean, I discovered I was a sleep talker thanks to her. You know, all day I'm trying to keep my speech normal, and then at night my brain betrays me. I wake up one morning, and Lindsay says to me, so last night you talked in your sleep. And I go, oh, this isn't going to be good. What did I say? And she said, you said, stop kissing me, Ryan Gosling. And I feel like she needs an explanation, right? It's 7 in the morning. My brain's not even on yet. And what I said was, it sounds like the statement of a man who's trying to be faithful. It's not bad. It's also not true. I mean, Ryan Gosling, I would have let it happen. And the longer we're together, the more she's seeing these moments, right? And like I said, a lot of them are funny, but a lot of them are embarrassing, you know? I mean, you see your real self. I sometimes think of a relationship as someone holding a mirror. And in that mirror, you see your real reflection. You see exactly what they see. But that's not the whole image. The whole image is them holding that mirror, saying, I see you. And I dare you to love yourself anyway, just like I do. And it's not easy. But I'm letting it happen. And I'm letting her see me in moments I would have rather kept hidden. Like the time we had a bat in our apartment. Look, we're a woke couple, right? Gender equity all the way. We're upsetting stereotypes. She's emotional, or she's mechanical. I'm emotional. Let's do this, you know? It turns out when there's a bat on the ceiling, that's man's work. So I'm trying to be brave, right? And I climb up on this ladder to catch this bat, and I say, Lindsay, hand me something. And she hands me this container. And as I go to trap the bat, I'm like, there's something wrong with this option, but it's too late. I should add, I've taken a metal trash can and I put it over my head. Right, like a knight of the round table. I was improvising. And I take this container and I trap the bat, and as I do, I go, that's what's wrong with this container. It's about the exact size of the bat. So, like, it's right inside my hand, and it's clear. Which is why the next thing I see is this little bat turn and, like, and unfurl and dive toward my hand like something out of Batman's nightmares. And I scream an expletive, I release the bat, I fall off the ladder, trash can falls off my head. I think, wow, I would have really loved you not to have been here. The thing about Lindsay is that she's a really special person. I mean, I know I'm biased, but if you know her, then you know I'm not exaggerating. The thing about Lindsay is she's resilient. She's kind. She's generous. She's the most spiritual person I've ever met. She's never had a day of church in her life. She's just kind. And another thing about her is she believes in you. Sometimes more than you believe in yourself. And she was the biggest reason why I left my safe job and started to be a professional speaker and have this business. And it was interesting because I would have these times when I was actually a depressed, motivational speaker. Which is surreal on a level I'm not sure that I can convey to you. It's kind of like there are two speeches happening at the same time. There's what I'm saying that people are hearing, and then there's the running narration in my head of how full of shit I am. I one time spoke at a middle school about kindness, and I was like, if you do these things, just like I've done, I really believe that you can have a happy life. And in my head, I went, fuck you, man. Weeks. Like, it was surreal. At a bully prevention assembly, and this is what I'm saying, the bully in my brain chooses that moment. But my career grows because no one can ever tell. I can always hide it. And in fact, I get asked to speak in front of 18,000 people in Indianapolis at a student convention. I have a half an hour to do this motivational talk. And the depression that I had been feeling at that particular moment in time was so heavy I couldn't get it to lift. And the week of the event, I can feel myself unraveling. I've looked online, and this is what the audience looks like. And I'm going to stand in front of these people, and I'm going to tell them how to have a big life, and I am falling apart. And I go to a doctor, and I get diagnosed with fairly high anxiety disorder, and I get a prescription. And the day before I fly to Indianapolis, I go to the pharmacy, and I'm 3 minutes late, and it's closed. And there's no medical support for what's happening to me. And I go home and I have what I can only describe as an episode. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed when Lindsay comes home. And I have all of my dress clothes spread out across the floor because I can't figure out what to wear. And I can't even make eye contact. My eyes are darting back and forth. I feel these just waves of panic hitting me. She's like, what's wrong? And all I can say is, it's not supposed to be like this. I'm going to tell these kids how to have a big life. I'm such a fraud. And there, in one of the smallest moments of my life, Lindsay sat with me, held space for me, helped me pick out something to wear. And I woke up and I flew to Indianapolis and I killed the speech and no one knew. And I said something in that speech that was as honest as I could be at that moment. I said this, I said, something I want you to know and remember is that everyone you know is a success and a mess. In some way, they are killing it, and in some way, they feel like a kid in grown-up's clothes. I have no idea what I'm doing. And they don't know exactly what I'm talking about. And I remember that I thought that this moment was going to be a milestone memory, speaking to this stadium full of kids. But what I remember when I think back on it was Lindsay sitting next to me, on the edge of the bed, one of the worst moments of my life, really knowing me, accepting me, not rejecting me. That's Lindsay. She's a special person. And I walked away from that experience and I thought, this thing is getting out of control. I've tried faith, I've tried therapy, I've tried comedy. This is the most financially successful year of my business, by the way, when all of this is happening. So I'm trying success and material accomplishment, and none of it is working. And I think, what is it going to take for me to solve depression? Because I don't want to lose this person. I don't want to lose all the good things I have in my life. And so I started thinking about when it started to really spike, and I realized that it started to spike when I began my business. Because there's this thing that happens when you start a business. You pursue a dream, right? You see the mountaintop up ahead, what you want to reach. What you don't see is that the path to get there, it goes down before it goes up. So now you're a few months in, and you've got this big vision, and you certainly can't complain to anyone because you don't have a boss, and you don't have to iron your clothes every day, and you have flexibility, and you live in the dream. How do you tell people you've never been more stressed or scared or felt like a failure in your whole life? Because all of a sudden, instead of going higher, you're going lower. It's the strangest place. I sat in my apartment, and I basically just fell apart in front of my dog. I was like, Jake, I don't know what I'm doing, man. And he's like, take me for a walk. That's fine. That's all you need. It's very simple from how I see it. And this dip, it happens to people. It happens to so many of us. Anytime we pursue something grand, something meaningful, something big, and we find we're failing, we don't know if we're going to pull out of it, it's a difficult time. And in the dip, you get really clear about the person that you wanted to be and the person that you actually are. Which in my case was a person who was good at speaking and not good at any of the other skills of running a business. Like reading contracts, negotiating, managing my time, responding to emails, not putting my emotion in every business decision, not watching all of the Die Hard movies on a Wednesday. That turned out to be the biggest battle, right? It was just controlling my behavior enough to pursue this dream. And the depression and anxiety was such a major part of that. And that's why I had these speeches where I felt like if only people could see how tough this is. And I was looking for answers. I hired a coach. I found him on the internet. He'd written an article about TV addiction and how he'd overcome it. And I just called his website and called the number at the bottom. We started talking. He's still my coach to this day. He taught me about mindfulness. He taught me that your thoughts are just thoughts. He taught me about awareness, that you don't have to just accept whatever it is that you think. You can question it, or you can just let it go by. We started to do some really good work. I got another coach, a business coach, because I wanted to be a success and have a more stable business. And I spent a lot of money. I spent $5,000 on the exact wrong coach for me. I hired this guy. He's from California. He was handsome. He was cool. He liked to talk about his emotions. Basically my dad. He had good hair. It was a whole thing. I could not be real around this guy. And he didn't care about my deeper struggles. He only cared about the actions. Did you make the sales calls? Did you market yourself? How do you market yourself when you don't like yourself? This is a genuine problem. Yeah. And we would have these calls, and each call would cost about $400. And he would see, if he asked me if I did the assignments, and if I didn't, he would kind of suggest we should end the call. There's no refunds. What I'm telling you is that it was the third month when I lied to my coach for the first time, which is a surreal moment. Did you do your calls this month, Colin? I sure did, man. I sure did. It feels good. What am I doing? I'm lying to a stranger about smart actions that I'm not taking, and I'm paying an ungodly amount of money for this privilege. I'm in the dip. Which direction is this heading? And people tell me this isn't a coach, he's an advisor. He's just giving you, advice, he's giving you solutions. You need somebody who's going to figure out Not just your surface goal, what you want, but your deeper goal, your deeper agenda. And I start talking to coaches. I take a coaching class. I decide to become a coach myself. And I realize right away that my deeper agenda is that I am cruel to myself. That's what's getting in the way of all of these dreams, of all of these experiences. All I have to do is be kind to myself. And this is now my new truth. I am kind to myself every single day. That's all I have to do today, is just love me. Just be on my side. Be my friend. And I do it. And when I am kind to myself, I'm more productive and motivated and creative. I see things more clearly than I could have ever imagined. I really believe that I'm on the other side of something. I am about a year into what I would call a mental health year of success. I have been happier longer than I've ever been in my life. I still get depressed. I still have days when I don't know what I'm doing. And on days like that, I like to talk to people who are also in the dip. And I like to tell them, keep going. Trust yourself. Just because you work by yourself, just because you work for yourself doesn't mean you have to work by yourself. Like, get out of the house. Get some friends. Like, be kind to yourself. And I'm kind to myself in so many different ways, because what I learned is that the dip just keeps happening. It never ends. It's not something that you can succeed your way out of. It's something you have to love your way out of. And now I tell people my story because I want them to know that being kind to yourself is all kinds of things, and it's different for everybody. And for me, it's drinking water. It's exercising. It's eating vegetables. It's getting off YouTube. It's taking medication. It's having friends. It's writing. It's putting myself out there. It's not any one thing. It's a whole foundation of things, creating a new floor, a new low that I can't crash below. And that low is higher than it's ever been at any point in my life. And if you're depressed, then you know that that is what success sounds like. When your low is higher than it used to be. And in the clarity that this kindness has brought me, it's helped me understand things about my life that at the time I didn't quite grasp. So I want to tell you one final story, and this story I want to share with you. It's a pretty great story, because on the surface it was a special day, it was my wedding day. But there was something that happened that day that I didn't understand until now, looking back through this new lens. So the story goes like this. Lindsay and I got engaged in 2014. We got married in January 2015, and we invited all of our family to be there. And as we did, I realized that I had only seen my parents in the same physical space so far one time in my life. It's when I was 17. It was at my high school graduation, and it was awkward. They were like ships in the night. I had 2 different graduation parties, and now I was putting them both in the same room with us, the most important day of our relationship, for hours. And as it got closer, I just dreaded it. We get to the wedding, everybody arrives. We're down in the venue, and we're waiting for Lindsay to come down. And it's just this beautiful energy in the room of this special day. And that's when I realize there's my dad, there's my mom. They're in the same physical space, and no one's fighting. It's already a success. And then they come over and they hug each other, and they start laughing and having a lively conversation. I feel like my head is going to fall off. Because I never imagined this outcome. And right before Lindsay comes down, my dad gestures to me, and he gestures to my mom. And we stand next together, and the photographer snaps this picture. And the photographer could have never known that I just got my family photo. My mom's smiling, my dad's smiling, and I have something in both of my eyes all of a sudden. Just like that. There they are. I have proof. And then Lizzie comes down the stairs and walks toward me. It is a moment I will never forget. She's so beautiful. She trusts me. I trust her. We've made this happen together. when we're married, it just feels like the most incredible music, the incredible moment. And that's when the music plays that I walked out to tonight. It's our song, I belong with you, you belong with me. Because Lindsay has helped so many of these things happen in my life. And I'd already cried like 6 times, but it only gets better. Because then they did speeches, and my mom kills. She does a speech where she makes an acronym of my name, and I don't remember the other letters, but the O stood for oily. Because when I was a little kid, I thought I said, hey Mom, I put hair gel in my hair, but I didn't. I put baby oil in my hair. She wanted people to know that on the most important day of my life. And then my dad got up and he gave a speech, and he said, I hadn't planned to do this. And he turned to my stepdad and he said, I want to thank you for raising Colin. And they hugged, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And later on, we're dancing. My dad comes up to me again, puts his arm around me and around my mom, and he looks at me, and he says, Colin, we're good. He was telling me it's okay. The story can end here. We've changed, you've changed, you can move forward. None of us are perfect. And I didn't understand it at the time. And I didn't have a lot of time to think about it because other people saw, and that's when we had a full wedding party group hug. Which really is my argument for small weddings. You can't do this with 200. With 25, you can really make it happen. You know, I walked away from that experience, and I actually thought that my parents were putting on a show for everyone else. Look how great we are, we've healed, we've resolved everything. I didn't know where to put this until I realized that they were putting on a show for me. They were showing up for me. On the day that I needed them most, my unreliable narrators could not have been more reliable. On that day, they showed up for me. And what I love about it, my mom knew that I had left our religion. She knew that I was being married by a yoga instructor. You notice these things. And she didn't say one negative thing about it. And she has loved Lindsay, and she has never made me feel small or question my decision. And I love that because my mom, in that moment, she wrote a story just like her faith would write. Right? Redemption, forgiveness, where it all has purpose. And my dad, there he is, holding a glass of scotch. My dad wrote a story that day too. And just like all great movies, he wrote it with a killer ending. On this day, we're good. On this day, you can understand. You can go forward. And I love these people because they're kind of my heroes. And I realize that they're not my unreliable narrators at all. If I have an unreliable narrator at all, it's this little guy. And it's the stories that he invented in the silence of his childhood to explain the pain that he was feeling that he never shared with anybody, so no one could ever tell him, oh, buddy, that's not what's going on. It's not your fault. These things happen. Don't you know everyone is a success and a mess, just like you. When I would tell that little guy, collywobbles. That's what my mom used to call him. And he and I, same person, hated it. I would tell that little guy that the stories that you're inventing aren't true. And you can change those stories. You have the power to change the stories that you tell yourself. And you really should. Because the stories that you tell yourself are the stories that you prove. And you have the power to tell the story any way you want. Now you might be thinking I'm saying lie about your life. What I'm actually saying is you might be already and not even know it. Dig out those stories. Ask yourself if they're still serving you. Because at the end of this whole journey, what I now understand, it's my new sentence. And it's this. If you really know me, you will relate to me. If we really knew you, we would relate to you. That is my truth. That is my religion. Everyone you know is a success and a mess. And I'm honored tonight to have done my very best to have shown you what is possible when you choose to be both. Thank you.